Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Cherie. Yeah. Has everyone recorded their presence? If so, the clerk will take the call. There being 131 members present, the House is now in session. The clerk will read a journal from the previous day.
Annapolis, Maryland, March the 16th, 2021.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much we consider the reading of the journal from the previous day.
To order petitions, memorials, and other papers. Yea and nay consent calendar 4, House bills passed in the Senate. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 10.
Recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the reading of House Bill 10 be considered the reading for all the bills on the calendar.
So ordered. House bill amended in the Senate. House Bill 12, the clerk will read the bill and the Senate amendments.
House Bill 12, alcoholic beverages, sale or delivery of for off-premises consumption, amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Motion not to concur.
In the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are rejected. Clerk will read the message to the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the House of Delegates refuses to concur in the Senate amendments and respectfully requests that the Senate recede from its position. Should the Senate prefer a conference committee to confer the disagreeing votes of the two houses, the House appoints Delegate D.E. Davis, Chair, Delegate T. Branch, Delegate C. Watson. Said bill is returned herewith.
House bill amended in the Senate. House Bill 72. The clerk will read the bill and the Senate amendment.
House Bill 72, County Boards of Education, Student Transportation, Vehicles, and Report, amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Move to not concur, Madam Speaker.
Motion for the House is to not concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendments are rejected. Clerk will read the message to the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the House of Delegates refuse to concur in the Senate amendments and respectfully request the Senate recede from its position. Should the Senate prefer a conference committee to confer the disagreeing votes of the two houses, the House appoints Delegate Washington Chair, Delegate Smith, and Delegate Hornberger. Said bill is returned herewith.
House bill amended in the Senate. House Bill 293. The clerk will read the bill and the Senate amendments.
House Bill 293, Natural Resources, Organized Killing Contest Restriction, amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We move not to concur in the Senate amendments.
Motion for the House is to not concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments are rejected. The clerk will read the message to the Senate.
Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, the House of Delegates has refused to concur in the Senate amendments and respectfully requests the Senate recede from its position. Should the Senate prefer a conference committee to confer the disagreeing votes of the two houses, the House appoints Delegate Gilchrist chair, Delegate Stein, and Delegate Jacobs. Said bill is returned herewith.
Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. There being 129 members present, the House is still in session. Calendar of third reading, House Bills number 97. Clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 584, Public Utilities Net Energy Metering.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 92 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 584, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 685, Labor and Employment Secure Maryland Wage Act.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 91 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 685, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 972, Real Estate Work Group to Study Real Estate Trust Money Distribution.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 972, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 1262, Maryland Electricians Act revisions.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 104 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1262, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
House Bill 1328, Economic Development Broadband Providers Joint Trenching and Fee Building Out Broadband Act of 2021.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 104 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 1328, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, Senate Bills number 16. The clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 40, Higher Education, Richard W. Collins III Leadership with Honor Scholarship, Bowie State.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 40, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. The clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 205, alcoholic beverages, sale or delivery for off-premises consumption.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 132 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 205, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 746, education, community colleges, collective bargaining.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 746, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read the next bill.
Senate Bill 779, Maryland 529 program, board authority and state contribution alterations.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 779, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 793, Frederick County alcoholic beverages, consumption permits.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 793, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 845, education, workforce development, sequence scholarships, eligibility.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 845, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 886, Transfer with Success Act.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 886, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed.
What number was that one?
That was 16.
Calendar or third reading, Senate Bills number 17. The clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 93, business occupations and professions, architects, scope of licensure.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 93, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 107, Labor and Employment, Secure Maryland Wage Act.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 92 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 107, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 325, tax sales, redemption, non-delinquent taxes.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 325, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 417, Power Plant Research Program, review of application for certificate of public convenience and necessity alterations.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 417, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 503, Public Utilities Gas Service Regulator Safety Flower Branch Act.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 101 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 503, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 651, Baltimore County Workers' Compensation, Permanent Partial Disability, Detention, and Correctional Officers.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 131 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 651, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 821, Alcoholic Beverages Manufacturers Licenses and Off-Site Permits.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 821, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, Senate Bills number 18. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 366, Department of Assessments and Taxation, Identification Number for Business Task Force.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 366, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 533, Horse Racing Maryland Bred Race Fund Advisory Committee Membership and Registration of Horses.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 533, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 593, Property Taxes, Homeowners Property Tax Credit, Calculation and Refunds.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 593, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 683, Election Law, Voting, Permanent Absentee Ballot List, Ballot Drop Boxes, and Report.
is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? Recognize the
Speaker.
gentleman from Calvert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I did order an amendment on this some time ago and was hoping we could delay this until the end of today's work, I guess, until the gentleman gets it to me. As soon as he gets it to me, I'm sure you guys will know before that I do. Is that possible?
Recognizing the subcommittee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think if we can get it by the end of the night tonight, if possible, that would be great. Special order to the end of the evening.
Thank you very much.
Question for the House is a special order Senate Bill 683 to the appropriate time this evening. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. The ayes have it. Clerk will read next bill.
Senate Bill 794, Wacomico County Property Tax Credit Hotel or Residential Development.
It's on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker,
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 133 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 794, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 38. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 220, Criminal Law, Hate Crimes, Protected Groups, and Penalties. Favorable.
Question for the House is the adoption of the favorable report. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? No. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered passed to third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 39. The clerk will read the first bill.
House Bill 1027, Baltimore City, Control of the Police Department of Baltimore City. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much for the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters provisions relating to the advisory board on the transfer of control of the police department of Baltimore City. Amendment number 3 authorizes...
Okay. Hold 1 second, please.
1 moment, please.
The floor system needs to be updated. They're not with you as fast as you are, so. Okay. Can't keep up with you, sir.
Made him cry.
Committee chair, you must start from the beginning.
Move so much. Be the reading of the amendments, Madam Speaker.
So ordered.
Okay. Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 alters provisions relating to the advisory board on the transfer of control of the police department of Baltimore City. Amendment number 3 authorizes voter ratification at either the 2022 or 2024 general election and expresses the intent of the General Assembly that the transfer of control will not affect currently held collective bargaining rights. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report. as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Clerk will read the next bill.
Senate Bill 786, Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021, Baltimore City, control of the Police Department of Baltimore City. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 modifies provisions relating to the advisory board on the transfer of control of the Police Department of Baltimore City and expresses the intent of the General Assembly that the transfer of control will not affect currently held collective bargaining rights. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendments are adopted. Question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill or to its title? Hearing none, the bill is ordered printed for third reading. Concurrence calendar number 6, House bills amended in the Senate. The clerk will read the bill and the Senate amendments.
House Bill 569, Electricity Net Energy Metering Limit. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment.
Ordered.
The Senate amendments correct a cross-reference. Move to concur.
The question before the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 569 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 569, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 658, Transforming Manufacturing in a Digital Economy Work Group, making it in Maryland. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Senate amendments add 3 members to the work group. Move to concur with the Senate amendment.
Question before the House is to concur in the Senate with the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 658 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 100 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 658, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 264, Solid Waste Management, Organics, Recycling, and Waste Diversion, Food Residuals. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We move to concur in the Senate amendments, which only adds a warning before a citation.
The question for the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 264 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 93 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 264, having received the constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read the next bill.
House Bill 518, Public Libraries, Electronic Literary Product Licenses, Access. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Move to concur on the Senate amendments. The Senate amendments delays the effective date of the bill, making it January 1st, 2022, rather than July 1st, 2021. Move to concur.
Question for the House is to concur in the Senate amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. House Bill 518 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, House Bill 518, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Report of the Committee on Judiciary. Clerk will read the bill. Report number 40, clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 600, Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021, Office of the State Prosecutor, Investigation and Prosecution of Deaths Caused by Police Officers. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 prohibits a law enforcement agency from receiving certain equipment from a military surplus program. Amendment number 3 establishes an independent investigative unit within the Office of the Attorney General to investigate incidents involving the death of a person caused by a police officer. Move the amendments.
Excuse me. House Bill, Senate Bill. Senate Bill. Question for the House is the adoption of the amendment. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Recognizing the gentleman from St. Mary's.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Can the floor leader please rise? A couple
Committee
questions.
Chair.
Good evening. We were supposed to start session tonight at 6:15. It's about 8:30 now. This is a major piece of legislation that changes policing. Can we go ahead and hold this bill and make the request to hold it to the appropriate time tomorrow?
It's a Senate bill, so you can make amendments to it on third reading tomorrow.
But again, I press that motion just because it's just not a lot of time. It's 8:30 at night now. I mean, we're looking at coming back in at, 10, 11 tomorrow.
No, I think that we could go forward on second reading today because you can amend the bill on third reading because it's a Senate bill.
Yeah, I appreciate that request. Thank you.
The gentleman pressing his motion.
Madam Speaker.
We can press the motion, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
I didn't hear what he said. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, no.
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
Roll call for what? Clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
The gentleman from Western Maryland to explain his vote.
No, Madam Speaker. I was waiting until that cleared. I did have a few questions of substance for the floor leader, if I could, once that's cleared.
Clerk would take the call. The motion fails. Gentleman from Western Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I see that my good friend from Baltimore City has already risen. I just had a few questions of substance because, as my colleague from St. Mary's County indicated, this is a pretty big bill. It apparently just came out of your committee with some significant amendments within the last few hours. And so I thought maybe we could have a little bit of a discussion as to what it does. So I had the pleasure to serve on the Speaker's work group on police reform and accountability over the summer, and these were some of the issues that we certainly discussed. Can you tell me, where did the committee come down on the issue of is there going to be an independent entity responsible for investigating alleged instances of police misconduct or use of excessive force outside of the law enforcement agencies within the community where the alleged instance occurred?
There'll be an independent investigative unit that will be set up within the Office of the Attorney General. It'll be staffed with troopers from the state police who will be assigned specifically to the unit, not to anyone else, and it'll have the ability to bring civilians on board to facilitate the work that the independent unit does. It'll only do work in cases related to deaths related to police action.
Okay, so non-death, serious physical injury, or other complaints of misconduct, they'll still be handled by whatever the appropriate local entity was that would have done the original investigation. But if it's a death case, which obviously would involve an excessive use of force complaint, then that'll go to this special unit, and no, it will be staffed, because that's one of the things we talked about over the summer. Would it be the state police, that operates with their own superintendent, or would it be within the ambit of the Attorney General's office? You've said that there'll be state police troopers staffed to the unit, but would it be fair to say it's under the control of the Attorney General?
It's under the control of the Attorney General. Is meant to be an independent unit within that office. And again, you're correct, it only deals with cases related to the death after a police action.
And so then, concurrently, we've talked about the investigation. What about the prosecution of instances where police misconduct or violations of the use of force statute or claims of excessive force? Will they be prosecuted? So we had a lot of state's attorneys. I remember very clearly over the summer, the state's attorney for Baltimore City came and testified and said that she vehemently opposed, if I recall correctly, an independent prosecutorial agency set up to prosecute police officers under any type of use of force or excessive force. She wanted to retain that right to prosecute cases of that nature within her own jurisdiction, within her own office. What are we doing? What does the committee come up with in terms of who will be prosecuting these types of cases?
What this legislation deals with, it indicates that within 15 days after completing an investigation required under the bill, the independent investigative unit shall transmit a confidential report to the state's attorney of the county that has jurisdiction to prosecute the matter, that either one, that contains detailed investigative findings and indicates that either one, the independent investigative unit finds a crime has been committed and that prosecution of the matter is recommended, two, the independent investigative unit finds that a crime has not been committed, or three, the independent investigative unit does not recommend prosecution. So they make a recommendation, but ultimately the state's attorney would make a decision whether or not to go forward.
Okay, so the law enforcement authorities are not retaining independent control for the investigation if it involves a death.
Correct.
But the state's attorneys in all of our counties and in Baltimore City will ultimately retain the decision whether or not to file and pursue charges informed by this recommendation.
That's correct.
And the Attorney General's office nor the state prosecutor, from what it sounded like, from what you just told me, they won't have any independent authority to come in and say, well, the state's attorney's office for Allegheny County, where I live, has chosen not to file charges, and I now can come in as the Attorney General and supersede or take action inconsistent with that. Is that a fair summation, or do they still have some independent authority?
They make recommendations to the local state's attorney's office as to whether they believe that they should proceed or not, and then the state's attorney again then will have to decide what they want to do based on that. Okay. Whether the Attorney General could then reveal whether or not they believe that they should go forward or not, that could impact the decision of the state's attorney in some way.
So that was my next question. Are the findings of this Attorney General investigative unit, are they to be automatically publicized so that they come out and say, hey, we've determined, we've investigated and said we think a crime was committed? Or is it something that's kept within confidentiality, for want of a better word, between the agency and the local state's attorneys and prosecutorial authorities?
I think that the investigation would still be confidential. The investigation is still confidential until it is completed, until the charges are brought, and then there would be information available through the discovery process, and as a part of the discovery process, as part of the prosecution.
Is there anything in the bill that discusses the potentiality or what would happen? I mean, in the real world, politics interferes and publicity interferes, but is there anything in the bill that suggests what, if anything, would occur if this Attorney General controlled independent investigative entity recommends the filing of charges and says, I believe that Officer John Smith committed a crime, violated the use of force statute that resulted in death, and I refer those charges, or I recommend those charges be filed by the state's attorney for Allegheny County. I'll use my own county as an example. And what happens if the state's attorney says, well, I've looked at what you've given me, and I've conducted whatever level of independent review and investigation I can, and in my judgment as the prosecutor, I don't think that he has. I don't think that the officer has committed it, or, as you know as a prosecutor, I don't believe that I can secure a conviction in my community upon this set of facts. is there anything that exists then other than public pressure, publicity, so to speak, that would control what the state's attorney can or can't do? That's one of my concerns, is just when you come out and make a public announcement on the front page of, say, the Baltimore Sun, say, hey, we've recommended that that officer committed a crime, we've recommended that charges be filed, and then if they're not, what's the mechanism for that, or is that just the end of it?
The issue that the committee heard over and over again, the committee sought to address in this area, is that when you have these most serious cases, that there is somebody independent to investigate it. We did discuss whether or not there should be also an independent prosecution, and as you're aware from the work group and from the committee's perspective, we were not able to come to a conclusion to determine whether there should be an actual independent prosecution. So this does then send it back to the state's attorney's office for them to decide whether or not to go forward.
Okay. Thank you very much for answering my questions. It does provide some clarity, and I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Recognizing the gentleman from Calvert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. Committee Chairman, can I ask a couple questions? One of the things I learned early in my life is listening to two lawyers go back and forth on a process.
It's terrible, isn't it? It's horrible. We should never do it.
Them and accountants, they can really put you in a head spin. First of all, could you explain to me the process is used now in these situations, and what is flawed in the current process?
The process
that would justify making this change?
The process if there's someone who is killed by a police officer.
Yes, as of now.
And the investigation. The local jurisdiction would engage in the investigation, and the local jurisdiction would provide that information to the state's attorney. As I mentioned before, what the committee had heard many times and over the last several years, and in fact maybe even before that, was that it was important to have an independent investigation outside of the local jurisdiction to ensure that the investigation is carried out properly, particularly when it's dealing with one of their own who was involved in an incident that involved the death of a citizen.
You mean, when you say one of their own, you mean a
that
member of that law enforcement?
We want to avoid the police officers from the jurisdiction investigating a police officer who killed somebody.
Do we know of any number or any instances where we've had a problem with that in the state of Maryland?
There have been, I think the issue is, again, that we want to make sure that there is not a problem, and we can do that by ensuring that there's a level of separation between the two. It's kind of hard to prove. You're kind of asking me to prove a negative delegate. That's part of the
I was just wondering if there was any instances that were well publicized that would justify to say that the local law enforcement or local state's attorney would not be objective in their decision as to whether to prosecute or to prosecute.
I mean, that's again what we're seeking to avoid. Again, it goes back to the local prosecutor at the end of the story to decide whether or not to go forward or not with a recommendation from the unit within the Office of the Attorney General.
Yeah, but isn't that local prosecutor voted on and put in place by the citizens of that locality to make them decisions?
There's no question that the state's attorney is elected by the people of that jurisdiction, just as the Attorney General is elected.
Yeah, it's funny that we allow. To me, it just seems weird that we allow local state's attorneys to make decisions on whether they prosecute certain crimes, but then when you have an issue as big as this, where I agree with you 100%, it's very important, and we should do whatever we have to do to make sure it's the right, that we don't trust their decision making in major things where someone is killed by a policeman or something like that.
But with respect, Delegate, this is not This does not have to do with the prosecution of the case. This has to do with the investigation of the case. This has to do with the step before that. So the person that you, at least in your statement that you're concerned about, the person who's prosecuting the case would still be the local state's attorney.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Is there any further debate? Recognizing the gentleman from Talbot.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's a quick question. There's no definition in the very beginning for weaponized, and I was interested to know if there was any discussion in committee about weaponized vehicle. What would constitute a weaponized vehicle? Very specifically, I'm familiar with the use of surplus military vehicles for crowd control and things like that. And I think would it be considered weaponized if it has, armor and stuff like that around it, or does it? How is weaponized determined?
The bill that passed the House, House Bill 670, actually included language that would prohibited the purchase by a local law enforcement agency of an armored or weaponized vehicle. This is not that language, so there is a distinction between the armored vehicle and a weaponized vehicle. A weaponized vehicle would be a vehicle that had weaponry that was part and parcel of it.
Okay, thank you. You answered my question.
Is there any further debate? Hearing none, the bill is ordered passed for third reading. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 41. Clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 178, Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021, Personal Records, Investigation of Law Enforcement Officers, Anton's Law. Favorable amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 adds restrictions on the issuance and execution of search warrants. Amendment number 3 authorizes inspection of records relating to police misconduct, investigations under certain circumstances, and establishes reporting requirements relating to search warrants. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The amendments have been adopted. The question now is the adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Madam Speaker.
Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The favorable report is adopted. Gentleman from Western Maryland.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't want to bore my very good friend from Southern Maryland with some more lawyerly questions to the committee chair. But I do have a few questions about one particular aspect of the bill. I'm looking at the reprint, and obviously, we know it's sometimes difficult to read these things quickly with all the crossouts and the lines and the hatch marks. One thing that I recall from, again, serving on the work group that was of particular concern, am I correct in understanding that this is the legislative vehicle, at least the Senate bill legislative vehicle, that the committee believes will address the issue of when you can release personnel records, alleged misconduct records, or records of complaints against an officer to the public through the Public Information Act or otherwise? Is this is the bill for that?
That's correct.
Okay. So where did the committee come down on this critical issue of what type of complaints, in terms of the investigative outcome of the complaint, what types of those complaints will be eligible or available to be released to the public? Meaning, I may not be getting the nomenclature exactly right, but is it a complaint that has been sustained, that the agency has found, yes, the misconduct has occurred? Is it a complaint where the agency has said, hey, we make no decision, so to speak, we cannot determine that it was misconduct or not, but it's still on the record? Or this was a complaint that was made by a citizen or an individual that we investigated and determined was unjustified or unsustained. Where did the committee come down on how you can release, or what types of those records can be released to the general public?
The committee adopted the language that, really the language that we passed in the House in House Bill 670 that was part of that legislation, and continued to adopt in this, that would make available and not treat as a personnel record. So that's the kind of the critical issue when you're dealing with the Public Information Act. It treats all of those categories, sustained, unsustained, unfounded, and exonerated, It does not treat those as personnel records for the purposes of the Public Information Act, so people would be able to request those investigatory files. We did, in the legislation that's before us right now, we did do a couple other things with the bill that's consistent with what we passed in House Bill 670. We also redacted information, personal information of police officers, personal information of family, other kind of personal identifying information. We also took out information. I just spaced on the other issue. Been a bit of a day, I'll remember it in a second. But we also made the information available to the state's attorney's office, the U.S. attorney's office, and the attorney general's office directly.
Okay, so those 4 categories, and I've already blanked a little. You said a sustained complaint, an unsustained complaint. You said exonerated, which I take to mean that the investigative agency determined the officer did nothing wrong. And then there was a 4th category. Was that unfounded?
Unfounded.
Unfounded. So to me, layman's terms, law school terms, unfounded or exonerated would mean the investigating agency determined that the officer had done nothing wrong, but there's still a record of someone made a complaint, someone made an allegation against them that was found to be unsustainable, essentially. And the committee is still going to allow those records to be released as part of a Public Information Act request?
Yes, the committee believes that it's important to reveal that information, and I believe that it's important to reveal that information because it's important for us to be able to say, okay, even if it was an exonerated complaint, even if it was an unfounded complaint or an unsustained complaint, it's important for us to be able to look at the investigatory process, to look at the investigatory file, and be able to know that that investigation, it did in fact happen, it happened well, and that it came to the conclusion it came to based on looking at the evidence that happened in that case. It's a backstop.
And finally, the final area, there's been a lot of discussion. In the 7 years I've been here, I would suspect almost every year we've passed or considered passing a bill relating to the concept of expungement for regular citizens, individuals who have some type of criminal charge. They can go and have that expunged, whether they were found to be not guilty, whether they were found to be guilty in some circumstances, whether they received probation before judgment, for a wide variety of offenses. You and I, our constituents, can now go and avail themselves of expungement, so it's no longer a public record 3 years, 5 years, way down the road. Is there anything that a police officer can do under this statute that he or she has a allegation made against them and they're investigated and it's determined that they did nothing wrong, they're exonerated or unfounded, unsustained, whatever the language was, do they have the ability to go back and expunge their own records within a certain time period to say, this isn't going to be out there forever because I didn't do anything wrong? I have the ability, as a normal citizen would have, if we had criminal allegations made against them, they can then expunge the record. So you can't type their name into case search and say, Joe Smith, look at him, he had all these charges against him. Well, all the charges were dropped. And so he has the ability to expunge that in most circumstances. Does a police officer under the committee's version of the bill have some similar type of redress?
Under the bill, first, a record of a technical infraction is a personnel record for the purposes of the section. So a technical infraction would be separate from the other forms of misconduct. So if it's a small thing, I didn't pull up my socks.
Sure.
Something along those lines. Those would still be personnel records for the purposes of the PIA. There are expungement. The committee dealt with this issue and dealt with it fairly extensively, as I know you're aware, and as I know the body is aware. We dealt with it extensively, and we decided that should not be, that the record should not be expungible, and that they should be available, with an idea again to making sure that the investigatory processes are working and that they're working well, and so that people feel like their complaints are being properly investigated and properly dealt with, and that it's consistent with that to not allow for the expungements of those things. It's worth mentioning that a custodian under the PIA can deny access to some of these records if it falls into one of 7 categories, and that's in current law.
I saw that.
So yeah,
There's some shielding provisions that are there.
effectively, but there are some reasons why they can choose not to release that information.
But at the end of the day, if I'm a 22-year-old rookie police officer in Baltimore County, and I have an individual, a suspect, a citizen that makes a complaint against me and says you did something wrong beyond a technical infraction. You mistreated me during an arrest, you committed an act of excessive force, you just didn't deal with me compliant with police procedures or laws. They make the complaint, the agency investigates, everyone determines nothing was done wrong, that this individual was unfounded. Because you and I well know in the real world, sometimes criminal defendants, not all of them, but sometimes they make allegations about things because they believe it affects the progress of their own prosecution for their own alleged offenses. And so that 22-year-old police officer in Baltimore County, they get this charge, they get this allegation, it becomes part of their permanent personnel record, and they're fully exonerated. And then 20 years later, after they put in all these years of exemplary service on the force, maybe they have another allegation made against them. And this time, in pursuing that allegation, maybe the people 20 years down the road, maybe they get a lawyer, and they say, we're going to sue, we're going to go after you. Can that individual then access those 20-year-old personnel records and say, aha, you have a record of you've had allegations made against you before. You may have been exonerated, but it's still on the record that you did something similar to this allegedly 20 years ago.
They could say that there is a personnel record, an investigatory file, and I think that's the critical part about this. The investigatory file would be available. People would be able to see why the charge was in fact exonerated in that time. The evidence would be available, and people would be able to see, okay, this is why this person was exonerated for this, so it's not really relevant to something that happens 20 years down the road.
Okay. Thank you for your answer. Once again, appreciate the time and the explanation.
Thank you very much. I apologize to the gentleman from Southern Maryland as well.
The gentleman from Talbot in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have one or two questions for the floor leader.
Good evening.
Good evening. So I'll be brief. It seems like we're back to something I stood on the floor a few weeks ago about no-knock warrants, and there seems to be some change in wording. So it's saying here a no-knock search warrant shall be executed between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. absent exigent circumstances. So as a layman, what is exigent circumstances? Because I don't remember that in the other bill.
And the exigent circumstances language was in House Bill 670.
Okay.
The difference between this legislation and what was passed in House Bill 670 is that this bill says that it's only no-knock warrants that can't be served at a time other than between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. And in exigent circumstances and urgent circumstances, there's some immediate issue that requires someone to get a no-knock warrant and enter.
All right. So the judge in this particular scenario, as I'm reading the bill, and just for the record, I mean the reprint on this was at 7:46 p.m. tonight, roughly an hour ago. So. They're asking that the judge go through and find evidence in support of a no-knock warrant. And then more specifically, it seems to say if the search warrant if they want to do the no-knock warrant outside of daylight hours, they have to give facts or circumstances. Could you give me maybe one or two examples? I'm sure there was testimony about what sort of examples a law enforcement officer would want to do it outside of the posted hours on this bill, 8 a.m. to 7 p.m.
The bill says that they need to make a statement as to whether the search warrant can be effectively executed during daylight hours, and if not, what facts or circumstances preclude effective execution in daylight hours. So daylight hours being what we've said in the bill of 8 to 7, and that goes to the issue of exigent circumstances. They would have to lay out the facts that justify going with a no-knock warrant outside of that period. So in other words, they would have to prove those exigent circumstances, or if not prove, they'd have to demonstrate what those exigent circumstances are to go forward.
So my last question, and it's brief based on this back and forth, which is a policy question, is are you concerned that law enforcement officers, free of getting what they're asking the judge, which clearly they're going to be asking for a no-knock warrant at a time where they're going to surprise the people and have a degree of success in this, are you concerned that law enforcement would be less willing or frankly unable to conduct a search warrant with the limitations that this bill seems to be putting in front of them?
No, and I'll tell you why. And it goes back to the discussion we had in House Bill 670. This is really fundamentally, we want to make sure that that when a no-knock in particular is requested, that we've got all of the information about the residents, all of the information that we need about the crime that's going on, so that they can go in as safely as possible, so that we don't run into a house where there are perhaps vulnerable people present who may have difficulty in some cases getting out of the way. You want to make sure that those I's and T's are crossed, and that's why we have a higher level of requirement, or more requirements, for a no-knock warrant as opposed to just a regular search warrant of a residence.
That may be the case, and I'll just say this, and then I'll yield. But the idea that we're putting a time frame on this appears to be, at its face, difficult for those that might be expecting a search warrant. They know the time and the general framework for which they could be safe for a warrant, and that's not the idea. Law enforcement needs to be able to work free of the people that they're investigating or the warrant that they're searching with. Does it at their discretion, and I believe that they would want to do it safely as well. Thank you.
Well, I would just say that, again, we're dealing with no-knock warrants. We're not dealing with regular search warrants here. We're dealing with a no-knock warrant, which is, as we discussed in the debate on House Bill 670, one of the highest levels, one of the biggest invasions of people's rights. So it makes it very important that we set those higher requirements on that effectively on that kind of a search warrant as opposed to a regular search warrant.
I mean, a no-knock warrant implies some bad stuff's going on, or else they would do it just as a knock and a thank you to come in.
Is there any further debate?
Madam Speaker.
The gentlelady from Carroll.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in front of us tonight at 9 o'clock tonight, we have 3 major pieces of police reform legislation that we have received on our computers an hour ago. And I serve on the HGO committee, as you know, and we talk a lot about transparency and about adequate notice and about giving 24 hours, 48-hour notices before agendas are popping up. And I'm going to ask again, if we need the time to read these very important pieces of legislation that affect every single one of our communities. Every single person in this body should be reading this stuff. How's this going to affect my community, my police officers? And I don't feel like we've been given just time, and I appreciate all the work of the Judiciary Committee. I thank God every night that I'm not on the Judiciary Committee, and I do appreciate your work. But we have not had time to read this. You're asking us to do amendments on third reader, which is tomorrow. It's 9 o'clock tonight. I only have time to read it. So I'm going to ask one more time for the body to consider this very important legislation and ask if we can special order this bill so that we have time to read it, have time to order amendments, and have time to really debate this bill that is deserved, because it's very, very important to all. It's major police reform. And I am just going to ask again for this particular bill if we can special order it so we have time to read it, understand it, and know what we're voting on.
Committee Chair.
I'd ask the body to resist the request to special order the bill. The bill is amendable on third reading. These debates are similar debates to the debates that we had on House Bill 670, which occurred not long ago. I know the amendment office has been working on amendments for each of these pieces of legislation, and we heard a number of amendments in the committee itself during the voting session that we just had. So I'd ask the body to resist the special order.
And I appreciate that you all have been working on this, but we all have been working in our own committees all day. We haven't had time to weigh in on your, listen in on your committee, unfortunately. And in order to read the bill, request amendments, and just understand what even is going on here, I don't even know what questions to ask. I'm trying to listen to the debate. I'm trying to read the bills. I'm just going to ask and plead with the body. This is very important information for each and every one of our communities, and we need time to read the bill, not in 1 hour to have 3 multi-page bills thrown in front of us. And I understand the Judiciary Committee understands this stuff inside and out, and we don't. I don't. And I really would like to understand it on behalf of the people that I represent and the law enforcement that I represent. So I'm going to ask for another vote to special order this bill until the appropriate time tomorrow, so that we have time to read it and understand what's going on. Thank you.
Recognizing the Minority Leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In terms of being rushed to prepare amendments for any of these bills, I'm wondering if instead of 10 a.m. For session tomorrow, we can meet at noon. That way there's a little bit more of an opportunity for folks to read the bill and then to ask the amendment office to provide the amendments.
That's fine. That's fine.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Is the gentlelady still pressing her motion to special order this bill?
I'll withdraw my motion. Thank you very much.
Okay. The gentleman from Carroll in the annex.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I just have a couple questions for the floor leader, the chairman.
Good evening.
How are you, sir?
I'm great.
Good. So, with regard to this particular bill that's before us now, I see that there is a distinction, you already alluded to it a couple moments ago, between technical violations and I guess more substantive violations. I heard you talk about that, and I see that in the bill there's some guidance as to what constitutes a technical infraction. But it seems to me, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Chairman, there seems to be a catch-all in number 3 under the definition of technical infraction, which talks about what is not otherwise a matter of public concern. And, that seems to cast a pretty wide net. Wouldn't you agree? Because a lot of things could be construed by some folks seeking information to be a matter of public concern. Is that right?
The definition of a technical infraction is there in the bill, but it contains 3 parts, but I'll be very quick. It means a minor rule violation by an individual solely related to the enforcement of administrative rules that, 1, does not involve an interaction between a member of the public and the individual, 2, does not relate to the individual's investigative, enforcement, training, supervision, or reporting requirements, and 3, is not otherwise a matter of public concern. So the third item is not a catch-all, it has to be all 3.
All right. Okay. Well, that makes me feel a little better.
I like to help.
Not much, but it makes me feel a little better. So, in essence then, applying that test, if an officer had been involved in a traffic incident with a departmental vehicle or something along those lines, then that wouldn't be subject to release of the record pertaining to that particular incident, then, right? Or would it?
It would not relate to the individual's investigative, enforcement, training, supervision, or reporting responsibility.
Okay, okay. And the same if the officer had been involved in some kind of domestic incident with a significant other that resulted in like an internal affairs investigation. Would that fall under the purview of a technical infraction in your estimation?
It would not fall under I don't believe that it would fall under the definition of a technical infraction because it doesn't relate to the individual's investigative enforcement training, supervision, reporting responsibilities.
So what if, Mr. Chairman, if the officer was dealing with or in the throes of PTSD or had some kind of mental health condition that may have been temporary in nature that resulted from the performance of his duties, and records were generated as a consequence of that, would that be subject to public scrutiny under this bill?
No, and it wouldn't be because that wouldn't be it wouldn't be police misconduct. And let me go a little further back to the conversation, to the questions a couple steps before about the traffic accident. That would not necessarily, that's not police misconduct. That's not going to result in an investigation happening because somebody has a car wreck. That also is part of what we're talking about here. You're talking about an investigation that's happening because of misconduct, and that's in those cases that's not there. The second example that you listed related to a possible assault. It might be a police misconduct. It depends, I believe, also on whether or not it happened within the color of their office.
Okay. Well, I had to take a gander at this thing quickly, Mr. Chairman, so I appreciate your elucidation.
You're very welcome. Happy to help.
Is there any further debate? Not. Hearing none, the bill is ordered past the third reading. Quorum call.
Madam Speaker.
Clerk will take the call. There being 131 members present, the House is still in session. Calendar of third reading, Senate Bills number 19. Clerk will read the first bill.
Senate Bill 83, Utility Regulation, Consideration of Climate and Labor.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 93 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 83, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk will read next bill.
Senate Bill 508, Public Utilities Net Energy Metering.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 95 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 508, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 750, Charles County Community Service and Pretrial Release Programs, authorization.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 750, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 762, Maryland Electricians Act, revisions.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 108 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 762, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 856, Electric Companies Billing Information.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 856, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 874, Work Group to Study Partial Expungement.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 101 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 874, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Calendar of third reading, Senate Bills number 20. Clerk, read the first bill.
Senate Bill 7, Courts Court Dog Program Veterans Treatment Courts.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 7, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 369, Child Abuse and Neglect Memorandum of Understanding with Military Family Advocacy Program.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 135 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 369, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 484, Criminal Procedure Victims of Crime Private Room.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 484, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 488, Family Law, Marriage, Licenses, and Records.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 98 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 488, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 505, Criminal Law, First Degree Child Abuse, Continuing Course of Conduct.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 134 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 505, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. Clerk, read next bill.
Senate Bill 671, Criminal Procedure, Charging Procedures, Citations.
Is on third reading and final passage. Is there any debate? If not, the clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker.
Has everyone recorded their vote? Does anyone care to change their vote? If not, the clerk will take the call. There being 94 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 671, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed.
Madam Speaker, excuse me.
Recognizing the gentlelady from Hartford.
Thank you. The system needs to be reset again. It's down.
The Senate is having the same problem. Report of the Committee on Judiciary, report number 42. The clerk will read the bill.
Senate Bill 71, Maryland Police Accountability Act of 2021, body-worn cameras. Favor of the amendments. Amendment number 1.
Recognizing the committee chair.
Move so much be the reading of the amendments.
So ordered.
Amendment number 1 is technical. Amendment number 2 strikes a provision making the testimony of a police officer inadmissible if the police officer failed to activate the officer's body-worn camera. Amendment number 3 requires police body-worn cameras to record and save at least 60 seconds of footage immediately prior to the officer activating the device, prohibits a law enforcement agency from changing body-worn camera policies through collective bargaining, requires law enforcement agencies to establish early intervention systems and employee assistance programs, establishes the Maryland Use of Force statute, and extends the life of the law enforcement body camera task force. Move the amendments.
Question for the House is the adoption of the amendments. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Amendments have been adopted. The question now is adoption of the favorable report as amended. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. Favorable report is adopted. Are there any additional amendments to the bill to its title? Chairman of the committee.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I would request that, again, it's getting late. I know that people are going to have some questions about this bill. That's fine. We'll ask to special order this until the appropriate time tomorrow.
Question for the House is the special order SB 71 to the appropriate time tomorrow. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The bill will be special ordered for tomorrow. Message from the Senate, number 32. Senate bills introduced in the House. The clerk will read the bills and committee assignment.
Senate Bill 515, Senator Klausmeyer, House Rules.
Special order for Senate Bill 683, the gentleman from Calvert.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk.
Senate Bill 683, Election Law, Voting, Permanent Absentee Ballot List, Ballot Drop Boxes, and Report.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have an amendment at the desk. It is amendment number 253726/1.
Amendment number 1.
Move so much be considered the reading of the amendment, Madam Speaker.
So ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So, ladies and gentlemen, there's another bill that's similar to this. I'm not sure if it's exactly the same bill, but I don't believe that it is. This bill, Election Law, Voting, Permanent Absentee Ballot List, Ballot Drop Boxes, and Report. As you can imagine, it establishes a permanent absentee ballot list and drop boxes all over the state. And so in the state, we currently have the ability to ballot harvest under certain circumstances. That is a fact. And what this amendment does, it's very straightforward. It literally prohibits ballot harvesting. The amendment prohibits ballot harvesting, and for all of those individuals in the state who have issues filling out their ballots because they're unable to fill them out and they need assistance, or they need assistance getting those ballots to the ballot drop boxes or to the local boards of election, in those cases, the local election board will send someone to assist that individual and pick up their ballot. So therefore, we don't have a need for ballot harvesting because we use the employees of the local election board to assist those individuals who we often hear, there are lots of them, and maybe there are, that way they get the help that they need from the local election board to fill out their ballot, and then the local election board at the same time will take that ballot on their behalf and drop it off at the ballot at the local election board or the ballot drop box, whichever is convenient for them. It's a very straightforward amendment. And I did a previous amendment like this, but it was not drafted properly, which is why I'm doing this amendment the right way, so that we once and for all get rid of ballot harvesting, and we once and for all secure the chain of custody of the ballot, which ballot harvesting causes. And we know that throughout 2020, that this was a huge issue with half of the country. And I can tell you it is a huge issue in Calvert County, Madam Speaker. Huge. People want to know that elections are secure. We don't have voter ID, but since this bill expands ballot drop boxes across the state and has a permanent absentee ballot, we are literally enabling ballot harvesting with the bill. So the amendment says no ballot harvesting. That's done, putting the kibosh on that, and at the same time, that if you need help, then someone from the local election board will come and assist you to fill out the ballot and pick that ballot up for you because you can't get to the ballot drop box. So I think this really cleans up the bill, doesn't change the intent of the bill, but it sure as heck makes things a little bit more secure. And I tell you something, it should really be a friendly amendment. And for those reasons, Madam Speaker, I move the amendment.
Subcommittee Chair.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. And to the delegate who offered the amendment, I do have a question about your amendment because I can't see it.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Delegate. So I understand that your amendment is prohibiting ballot harvesting. What are you defining as ballot harvesting?
Sure. Of course, the system is locked up again. The amendment identifies ballot harvesting as a third party or any individual that goes from door to door and collects ballots, no matter the reason. And so what the amendment does is it closes that loophole and eliminates ballot harvesting as I just defined it. And then in addition to that says, hey, look, there's a local election. We all have a local election boards. So just call up the local election board. They'll send the person to your house. They'll help you fill out the ballot if you are unable to do so. And then they'll pick the ballot up from you and then take it to the local election board or the drop box. Because that really was the issue. That's how it's defined. So it completely eliminates that ability of a third party other than someone from the local election board.
Thank you, Delegate.
Yes, of course.
Right. So to the body and on the amendment, I urge the body once again to reject this amendment in regards to ballot harvesting. I've stood on this floor and said this multiple times. The way that the delegate and what the delegate is defining as ballot harvesting is already illegal under our code in Maryland. To be very clear, there are individuals in our state who do need help filling out their ballot. And we have a very clear process under penalty of perjury where someone can be a duly authorized agent to help a specific person to return their ballot to the local board. They have to sign an affidavit under the penalty of perjury and become a duly authorized agent for that person and that person only. Anything outside of that and what the delegate is defining there is illegal in Maryland. In addition to that, what the delegate is suggesting in terms of local boards helping individuals to fill out their ballots all over state, can you even imagine the burden on your local boards of election and the already numerous tasks that they have during an election to go to people's homes or help in all of the individuals in our jurisdictions that need help with filling out their ballot? That is a huge burden that would require many, many additional resources for our Board of Elections. So I think that the expense of hiring and the burden on your local Board of Elections is also why you should vote no on this amendment. I urge your no vote.
The maker of the motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So the floor leader is correct. Ballot harvesting is legal. You have to be at least...
Illegal.
Ballot harvesting is legal. It says it right here. Must be at least 18 years old. You can't be a candidate on the ballot. You have to be an agent of the voter, which means you just need permission in writing from the voter. So that actually is ballot harvesting. If you look at the amendment, it actually deletes that and specifies that you can no longer do that and that you have to call the election board. I certainly know this upsets some people. I can't understand why. I'm glad this is actually being recorded, because I have no doubt that we're going to find out that with hundreds of drop boxes across the state, we're going to have all kinds of issues. I have no doubt. And I have also no doubt that because some are uncomfortable, it's demonstrating to me some other issue that must be out there. I'm not sure what it is, but here's what I finally was able to open the system for the floor leader. In this section, ballot harvesting means collecting a completed absentee ballot of a voter or absentee ballots of multiple voters by a third party that is not an employee of a local election board. Pretty straightforward. Pretty straightforward. So if we're asking the local election boards to spend, across the state, I have no doubt it's going to be millions of dollars to buy these drop boxes, then I don't think that it's going to be that big of a deal to spend a little extra money to hire some additional people to assist these voters who need assistance. And I'm not really certain the number is as large as we think it is, but the idea that I can call an election board member and they come to my house because I have issues with my hands, like I have really bad arthritis, and they can assist me to fill out my ballot means perfect sense to me, and then they can take the ballot and then take it, of course, to the local election board where it can be processed and counted. So to be clear, ballot harvesting is legal. It says it right here in the amendment. Under the conditions you can do it. And this bill, SB 683, actually specifies that if you're on the permanent absentee ballot list, you will be sent notification that the absentee ballot is coming. So you're sent a notification to let you know you're on the absentee ballot list. And oh, by the way, it's going to be coming really soon, the absentee ballot. So the next thing all someone would have to do is to send out a mass mailing to that absentee ballot list, because it's public information, and then ask them if they need assistance, and then give them the documents they need. That's ballot harvesting. It is legal right now. This amendment makes it illegal. So, Madam Speaker, it's really this simple. A vote for this amendment means you want to ban ballot harvesting. A vote against it means you're all about it. Thank you.
On the amendment, all in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed?
Roll call, Madam Speaker.
Roll call.
Madam Speaker?
Clerk will take the call. The amendment fails. Senate Bill 683 is on third reading and final passage. The clerk will call the roll.
Madam Speaker?
Clerk will call the roll. Take the call. There being 95 votes in the affirmative, Senate Bill 683, having received a constitutional majority, is declared passed. It ends to work at the desk. Quorum called before adjournment.
Madam Speaker?
So everyone recorded their presence. The clerk will take the call. There being 135 members present, the House is still in session, recognizing the majority leader.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that the House stand adjourned until Friday, April 2nd at 12 noon.